I'm Andrew Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Liberty Nation Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent. This week, U.S. interest payments could eat the federal budget. In the fiscal year 2022, the federal government made nearly $500 billion in interest payments, up from $352 billion in the previous year, according to the latest data from the Treasury Department. This is more than the veterans' benefits and transportation budgets, and is nearly as much as what the federal government spends on education. Looking ahead, Moody's Analytics forecasts that interest payments could eclipse the U.S. government's entire defense budget, which was $767 billion in the last fiscal year. Moody's Analytics economist Dan White said in the report, quote, "Regardless of who wins the midterms or in 2024, there are really difficult decisions that will have to be made. This is really going to handcuff them." Indeed, the cost to cover America's skyrocketing debt levels is going to become more expensive as the Federal Reserve continually raises interest rates. While the Eccles Building has hinted that it could slow down the pace of rate hikes, the benchmark federal funds rate is still expected to go higher and remain elevated until inflation falls to the central bank's 2% target. Any increases in the average financing rate will result in major implications for Washington, especially when Uncle Sam retires older and cheaper debt with costlier new debt. So, for example, if the benchmark interest rate reaches 4.97% in May, as the futures market speculates, and this translates to more than the $31 trillion national debt, the US government will be on the hook for approximately $1.4 trillion a year in new interest payments. Meanwhile, the Congressional Budget Office projected this past summer that interest rate spending over the next 9 years will total $2.5 trillion, and this is based on current interest rates, not future ones. But what could be a devastating blow to the United States government is the Federal Reserve and its balance sheet runoff. The Fed currently has approximately $9 trillion on the books, comprised of treasuries and corporate bonds. It is selling these bonds, meaning that Washington has lost a buyer, an entity that monetized the national debt, bailed out the nation's capital during COVID, and enabled both parties to spend like drunken sailors. But some folks in Washington do not think this will ever become a problem because the US has a printing press, or in other words, money go brrr. If the US Treasury market ever suffered a chaotic event similar to what happened across the pond in the United Kingdom in September and October, the Fed or the Treasury could employ some interventionist extraordinary measures. Ultimately, it all comes down to how high interest rates will be and for how long. In the end, the US is paying for the excess, opulence, decadence, and ball of time that the nation has been living on after a quarter century of easy money policies. Will public policymakers make the tough fiscal decisions, or will they keep kicking the can down the road? Neither the Republicans nor Democrats possess a track record of fiscal responsibility. So perhaps America is doomed. You're all doomed. That's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column on the pages of LibertyNation.com, where I discuss turkey prices and shortages, central bankers falling in love again with gold, and the US diesel shortage. Thank you.
Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.
I'm Andrew Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.